Hi, this is Greg Hunter, and this is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, July 12th, 2013. I think the big story this week came right out of the mouth of Fed Chief Ben Bernanke when he did a 180-degree turnaround and went from hawkish, and I'm going to taper this $85 billion a month that he's doing to prop up the economy, or I should say the Federal Reserve is doing, and he did an about face and says, yeah, the economy is really not that strong, and we're going to have an accommodated policy for, quote, the foreseeable future. Now, this money is being used to suppress interest rates and prop up the economy. And as soon as the stock market heard that, they could be slowing it down, tapering, just cutting it back a little bit, just talking about it at the end of the year, boom, we had a mini crash down 1,000 points. Interest rates spiked up. All of a sudden, the housing market, this could kill the whole housing recovery. And the whole economy looked like it was going to go into a tailspin. The following week, it was last month when Bernanke said that, the following week after he said that, the Fed Reserve governors and presidents came out in force and said, no, the market's got that wrong. Well, this week he came out and completely walked that back. He also brought up this really important point. And Ira Harris, master trader Ira Harris sent me an email about this, and he talked about how what he picked out was that Ben Bernanke also brought up the unemployment number. He's got the Fed has this idea that if it gets to 6.5% unemployment, that they could begin tapering, that the economy was getting better. Right now it's 7.6%. But Ben Bernanke says that this 7.6% unemployment rate, and I get this quote, overstates the health of employment. And that's because people are dropping out of the workforce. They call it the labor participation rate, which is, really, as low as it's been for the last, 20 years or so. And so he says that the 7.6%, it overstates the health of employment. Oh, he's got that right. John Williams at shadowstats.com configures unemployment the way the Bureau of Labor Statistics did it in 1994 and earlier. Yes, the BLS. And if you were using BLS computations, the true underemployment rate would be 23.4%. Hey, let's get serious here, okay? Without this $85 billion a month to buy mortgage-backed securities, the mistakes of bankers, and buy $45 billion a month in treasuries, interest rates would spike, the stock market would implode, the economy would implode. The only thing propping up the economy is the Federal Reserve actions, 0% interest rates as far as the eye can see, and this accommodated policy for the, quote, foreseeable future. Have you ever seen the Fed looked this unorganized, this desperate, and this disheveled? Boy, I haven't. And this amount of money printing that props up the stock market should make anyone a little nervous, because at some point the money printing isn't going to work anymore. The dollar is going to be toast. Speaking of disheveled, the Obama administration came out on a blog, the Friday after 4th of July, the 5th of July, and basically dropped this little bomb that the employer mandate is going to be put off for a year. Now, that's with Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, where if you have 50 or more full-time employees, that you are required to give health care to them or pay a fine. And what a lot of employers have been doing is basically keeping their roles under 49, or under 50 employees. I have a friend of mine, I think I told you this last week, he has 49 employees, not going to go to 50. Or they take their full-time employees and they make them part-time employees. They cut them back from 40 to 29 hours. Now, the Obama administration says, well, we're just not ready. But we're still going to have the individual mandate. In reality, I think I know why they're freaking out, because they know it's an economy killer. And all you have to do is look at the latest employment report where they said, woohoo, well, we have 190 some odd thousand jobs created, almost 200,000 jobs. But when you drill down, what do you see? You have a spike in part-time jobs and a decline in full-time jobs. Employers are getting ready for this, and putting it off 1 year, I don't think is going to make any difference. And the Republicans in the House Representative and some in the Senate are saying, whoa, wait a minute. You can't, this is your signature legislation. You put it through the House and the Senate, and you sign this into law. You can't just decide, just kidding, I'm not going to do that. the folks in the House are saying you need to bring that back here and you need to take it through Congress to put this off, to ask us to put it off. Now, the folks in the House of Representatives, the Republicans, are trying to get the individual mandate stopped. What a colossal mess. And I think the Obama administration and Democrats are fearful, and I think they're fearful for what kind of damage this could do to the economy, especially going into the midterm elections for the House and part of the Senate. The midterm elections in 2014, that's what they're freaking out about. So how can we minimize this? You could minimize it by just doing away with it and maybe just have the exemption where you can let people get health insurance who have a pre-existing condition. But I don't know if it's so complicated that that's not going to happen. And don't forget, we still have to deal with the debt ceiling that's going to come up in September. So this is a colossal economy-killing mess. That's what Carl Denninger called it. I had him as an interview. He's a trader, and he has a market-ticker.org website, and he said this is an economy killer. And I think the Democrats and the Republicans both think it's an economy killer. I'll have Denninger on coming up this Monday. The Arab Spring has turned into an Arab nightmare, particularly where it started in Egypt. We had all these protests, a little more than a year ago, a year and a half ago or so, and, Mubarak was kicked out of office by the military, basically, and through all these protests. And then they had elections, and then Morsi became the president. He was the Muslim Brotherhood candidate. And while he was running for office, for president of Egypt, he said, we're going to bring in all these groups. After he was elected, he went, we're in charge now. The Muslim Brotherhood is in charge, and you guys can just go, pound sand. Well, more protests, and once again, the military took Morsi out of power, and now the Muslim Brotherhood is angry. They are teetering on revolt. They've already had lots of bloodshed over there, and lots of threats of starting a civil war. And what this shows is just how unstable the Middle East really is. You have Egypt unstable, and they're even running out of food supplies. Libya is unstable. You have, the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. You have Jordan, which we have troops, there. We have pieces of the 1st Armored Division, 4,500 or 5,000 troops there. Why? Because we're afraid of the Syrian civil war destabilizing Jordan. Lebanon, the Syrian civil war has has also spilled into Lebanon. That civil war has claimed the lives of more than 100,000 Syrians. Then on top of it, you have, protests and riots in Turkey. Then we have the big charge this week by the Russians that says, oh no, the Assad regime didn't use chemical weapons. It was the Syrian rebels, which, of course, is Al-Qaeda. The Syrian rebels are the ones that used poison gas, not the Assad regime. And smack dab in the middle, you have Israel sitting quietly. What could go wrong? What a mess. I have a couple of cases to talk about. One, I just want to bring up the Tsarnaev brother, the surviving Tsarnaev brother in the Boston bombing case. He's pled not guilty to 30 felonies. And I think, boy, that's going to be interesting, especially if the U.S. government, who's prosecuting this case, are going to stand up and say, whoa, can't talk about that, national security. That's a dicey case. Another dicey case, and I haven't been covering this because it's really not my bailiwick, but I've been watching the mainstream media cover it. Boy, most of the coverage, very unfair. I mean, boy, they might as well just come out and say, we want George Zimmerman convicted. And they've used this case to kind of signify or show or falsely show that we have some kind of white on black murder problem in America. We do not have a white on black murder problem in America. I mean, even the president came in and made this divisive comment that said right at the beginning of not long after Trayvon Martin was shot, and said that well, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. Of course, Zimmerman says it's self-defense. He shot him when he was on his back. That's neither here nor there. What I'm telling you is that the mainstream media has been using this as a wedge issue. I think they've been calling Zimmerman a white Hispanic. Boy, they want him to be white. He considers himself Hispanic. Many other people, most people consider him Hispanic. He's not white Hispanic. He is simply Hispanic. And I think the president brought that comment up about Trayvon, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. I think he brought that up to divide the country. We do not have a white-on-black murder problem. According to FBI statistics, 90%, at least 90% of black people are murdered by other black people. Likewise for white people. 90% of white people are murdered by other white people. Statistically speaking, we do not have a white-on-black or black-on-white murder problem in this country. It is completely and totally falsely contrived. And I think it's being done to divide the country, divide and conquer. And finally, I just want to make one comment about this whole $1 trillion student loan. It's come to light, and, the interest rates on the student loans on $1 trillion of student loan, more than $30,000 on average each student has with this debt mess. $1 trillion to add to the other trillions of dollars of problems with America. And, their interest rate was going to double from 3.4 to 6.8%. And maybe there's a deal to hold that down. But let me tell you who I blame for this in part. I blame the educators and the professors and the administrators that allowed these kids to belly up to the bar and take on thousands and tens of thousands in debt each to get a college education when there's, very few jobs out there in a lot of these fields. And, meanwhile, the educators and administrators and the university presidents all bellied up to the bar and got, lifetime medical benefits and tenure and big salaries and big vacations. Hey, I got an idea for you. Why don't you take some of these endowments and some of this endowment money and use it to pay off student debt? We have a new university president coming to town here. One of the things that she's going to do, one of her goals, to increase the endowment. Why don't we take some of those endowments, which some are in the billions of dollars, and every university has one, and take some of that money and pay off some of the student debt? Not to pay it all off. Students should be on the hook for some of it. But how about that? How about cutting some of your benefits and some of your pay to help these kids get out from underneath this massive debt that you helped them get underneath? And didn't say a word. Now, you don't hear anybody in the university systems talking about, how we're going to have a terrible problem it is. Of course not, because they are the main benefactors of all this student debt. Yes, the universities. Shame on these universities for allowing these kids to get this heavily indebted, and shame on them for not using their endowments, or at least some of them, to pay off some of this debt. That's the way I see it. I'm Greg Hunter. Thank you for coming to the site and supporting it. Thank you for using the donations button. Have a nice weekend.